Welcome to Systemic Stack. My name is Kabir Anand. This is episode 14 of the System Engineering series, and today we'll explore service decomposition strategies in a way that helps you prepare for system engineering interviews on this topic. Deciding exactly where to split a monolith is a high-stakes design choice. If you miss the mark, you're stuck with a brittle distributed monolith. We'll look at strategies like bounded contexts and business capabilities, so you can confidently justify your architectural boundaries when you're in the hot seat. We begin with the scaling wall, looking at why monoliths eventually struggle and how we can identify autonomous boundaries that let a system evolve. It starts by breaking down the four core pillars of decomposition: bounded context through domain-driven design, business capabilities, data sovereignty, and organizational alignment. Well, you'll see how to align services with what a business actually does, rather than just technical actions. From there, we'll dive into the database per service pattern, since true autonomy is impossible if you're still sharing data schemas across teams. We'll also cover Conway's law to show why your team's own communication structure basically dictates your technical architecture. Later, we'll tackle the challenge of service granularity, helping you find the sweet spot between fine-grained and coarse-grained services to keep coupling low. We'll wrap up by applying these strategies to a real-world e-commerce interview case, so you've got a framework to justify these trade-offs under pressure. By the end, you'll understand how to carve up a complex system into independent, manageable services. Let's set the scene with a situation you likely encounter in production. Imagine you're at a fast-growing startup with a massive Ruby or Java monolith. It's worked great so far, but now you've 50 engineers all trying to commit to the same repository. Deployments take an hour, merge conflicts are constant, and a tiny bug in the payment logic can crash the entire catalog. This scaling wall is exactly why decomposition matters. It's the transition from a single unit of deployment to a distributed system. The failure mode here is often a knee-jerk reaction where you try to split everything at once without understanding the dependencies. This usually results in a chaotic system where services are constantly waiting on each other. Well, to avoid that, you have to look at the constraints like data consistency and team structure. Identifying these pressure points early is what allows you to build a system that can actually survive the growth of the company without grinding to a total halt. Service decomposition is really the art of breaking the monolith in a way that preserves sanity. It works by applying specific mental models to define where one service ends and another begins. What matters here is that the success of your entire microservices journey depends on these initial lines. If you get the boundaries wrong, you'll end up with massive amounts of network traffic just to complete a single user action. A common failure mode in interviews is proposing a split based on technical layers, like putting all your database logic in one service and all your UI logic in another. That's a mistake because it forces every feature change to touch multiple services. Instead, we want to define boundaries using industry standard patterns like business capabilities or subdomains. Now, by mastering these patterns, you can justify your architectural choices to an interviewer by showing how your design minimizes cross-team coordination and maximizes the speed of feature delivery. It's about building for change, not just for the sake of being modern. To get decomposition right, we look at four core pillars: bounded contexts, business capabilities, data sovereignty, and organizational alignment. These pillars work together to ensure that each service is truly autonomous. Bounded contexts help us define the language of the service, while business capabilities ensure the service does something valuable for the company. Data sovereignty is the technical enforcement of those boundaries, and organizational alignment makes sure the teams can actually manage them. What matters here is that without these pillars, your architecture will likely crumble under the weight of its own complexity. I mean, the biggest failure mode here is ignoring the data. If you have 5 services all pointing to the same global database, you haven't actually decomposed anything. You've just made your system more fragile. So when you're explaining your strategy, always lean on these 4 concepts to show you're thinking about the full life cycle of the system, from the database schema all the way up to the team's communication patterns. You'll know you've hit the scaling wall when the monolith starts feeling like a liability rather than an asset. It works as a tipping point where the overhead of coordination outweighs the benefits of a shared code base. What matters here is that staying in a monolith too long leads to developer burnout and stagnant product growth. You see merge conflicts every day, and a single test failure in a module you don't even use can block your entire release. Now, the common failure mode here is premature decomposition. That's when a team moves to microservices before they actually have the scaling problems to justify the complexity. In an interview, you should be able to identify these specific pain points like deployment bottlenecks or resource contention as the valid triggers for a split. Drawing that first line is hard because it requires a deep understanding of which parts of the system are changing the fastest. If you can pinpoint the high churn areas and isolate them first, you've successfully navigated the first hurdle of the scaling wall. The core mission of decomposition isn't just about splitting code, it's about identifying autonomous boundaries that can evolve independently. It works by looking for areas of the system that have high internal cohesion but low external coupling. What matters here is that the goal is to allow a team to change their service's internal logic without needing permission from three other teams. A major failure mode is focusing too much on the technology stack instead of the business logic. If you split a service just to use a new programming language, you might be creating a boundary that doesn't actually align with how the business operates. This leads to chatty interfaces where services are constantly pinging each other for data. Well, in a system design interview, you want to show that you're prioritizing boundaries that reduce these dependencies. You're looking for seams in the logic where you can cut without leaving too many loose wires. True autonomy means a service can be deployed, scaled, and even rewritten without breaking the rest of the ecosystem. Domain-driven design, or DDD, gives us the concept of bounded contexts, which is arguably the most powerful tool for decomposition. It works by ensuring that a specific term or model has a single consistent meaning within a specific boundary. For example, the word product means something very different to a shipping service than it does to a marketing service. What matters here is that it prevents the God object problem, where one massive class tries to handle every single attribute in the entire company. The failure mode here is context leakage, where logic from one domain starts creeping into another because they share the same database tables or naming conventions. When that happens, your boundaries start to blur and you lose the benefits of microservices. So in an interview, explain how you'd use bounded context to encapsulate these models. You're basically creating a linguistic and logical wall that keeps each service focused on its specific job. This keeps the code clean and ensures that teams don't have to understand the entire universe to fix one small feature. One of the most practical ways to organize services is by business capabilities. This approach works by aligning your software with what the business actually does, like shipping, inventory, or billing. What matters here is that business functions are generally more stable than specific technical implementations. While the way you calculate tax might change, the fact that you need a billing function usually won't. A common failure mode is organizing by technical functions instead, like having a logging service or a validation service. This often leads to a nano service mess, where you have to jump through 5 different services just to complete one business action. When you're in an interview, try to map the system's requirements to these broad business categories. It shows you understand the big picture and aren't just focused on the code. By grouping related functions together, you reduce the need for cross-service communication and make the system much easier to reason about. It aligns the technical architecture with the organizational structure, which is a key principle for long-term maintainability. Functional decomposition takes the idea of business capabilities a step further by focusing on specific feature-based splits. It works by identifying distinct user-facing actions or technical workflows that can stand on their own. For example, in a streaming app, user profiles and video encoding are functionally very different. What matters here is that these different features often have very different scaling needs. You might need to scale your search feature to handle thousands of requests per second, while your account settings feature stays relatively quiet. If they're in the same service, you're forced to scale both together, which is a waste of resources. The failure mode here is over-fragmentation, where you split features so thinly that the overhead of managing the infrastructure exceeds the benefit of the split. In an interview, you'll want to justify a functional split by pointing to these different operational profiles. If one feature is CPU intensive and another is memory intensive, that's a perfect reason to split them. It allows for more efficient resource usage and much faster deployment cycles for the most critical features. If you remember one thing today, let it be this: data sovereignty is the bedrock of microservices. It works by ensuring that each service owns its own data schema and no other service can touch it directly. What matters here is that shared databases are the single biggest bottleneck in distributed systems. If service A and service B share a table, you can't change a column name in A without potentially breaking B. This creates a massive failure mode where your teams are once again locked in a high coordination cycle. You lose the ability to deploy independently. Now, in an interview, if you're asked how two services should communicate, never say they just read from the same database. That's a huge red flag. Instead, explain that they must communicate via well-defined APIs or events. Each service should treat its data store as a private implementation detail. This might feel like extra work, especially with data duplication, but it's the only way to ensure that your services can actually evolve and scale without bringing the whole system down. To implement data sovereignty, we use the database per service pattern. This works by giving every microservice its own private database, which could be an entirely different type of store depending on the needs of that service. For instance, your catalog might use a document store while your ledger uses a relational database. What matters here is that it allows you to pick the best tool for the job and ensures that schema changes are isolated. A primary failure mode is the distributed transaction nightmare. When you split your data, you can't easily use traditional SQL joins or transactions across services. If you try to force them, you'll end up with a slow, fragile system. In an interview, you should talk about how you'd handle this using eventual consistency or patterns like sagas. You have to trade off that immediate consistency for the freedom of independent scaling. It's a classic architectural trade-off. By keeping data private, you prevent backdoor dependencies that would otherwise turn your clean microservices back into a tangled mess over time. You can't talk about decomposition without mentioning Conway's law. It basically states that a system's architecture will eventually mirror the communication structure of the organization that built it. It works as a sort of gravitational pull. If you've two teams that don't talk, they'll likely build two services that are hard to integrate. What matters here is that if your service boundaries don't match your team boundaries, you're gonna have constant friction. A common failure mode is designing a perfect architecture on paper that requires 5 different teams to collaborate on every single release. That's a recipe for disaster. In an interview, show that you're thinking about the human side of the system. You might suggest the inverse Conway maneuver, where you intentionally structure your teams the way you want your code to look. If you want independent services, you need independent cross-functional teams. This alignment reduces the cognitive load on developers and allows for much faster delivery. It's about making the path of least resistance lead to a good architecture rather than fighting against the org chart. Finding the sweet spot for service granularity is a constant struggle. On one end, you've coarse-grained services that might be too large and slow. On the other, you've fine-grained nano services that are so small they become an operational headache. This works by evaluating the trade-offs between agility and overhead. What matters here is that every new service adds complexity in monitoring, networking, and deployment. A massive failure mode is splitting services so small that a single business transaction requires 10 network hops. This introduces latency and creates many more points of failure. In a system design interview, you should argue for right sizing. Start with slightly larger services and only decompose further when you have a clear reason, like a specific scaling bottleneck or a team that's getting too big to manage one code base. You're looking for that balance where each service is small enough to be understood by one person but large enough to perform a meaningful business function without constant outside help. It's about being pragmatic, not dogmatic about service size. The ultimate goal of all these strategies is minimizing dependencies to achieve low coupling. This works by creating services that can be deployed, scaled, and tested in total isolation. What matters here is that the more your services depend on each other, the more you risk a cascading failure. That's a failure mode where one small service goes down and takes the entire system with it because everything is synchronously linked. To avoid this, you should lean towards asynchronous communication and event-driven patterns. In an interview, explain how using a message queue or an event bus can decouple your services. Instead of service A calling service B and waiting for a response, service A just emits an event and moves on. This makes the system much more resilient and allows services to handle spikes in traffic independently. Now you also have to watch out for logical coupling, where services still need to know too much about each other's internals. Keep your interfaces simple and your events focused on what happened rather than what to do next. That's how you build a truly robust distributed system. Let's look at a classic interview case: decomposing an e-commerce giant. If you're asked this, don't just start listing services. Start by identifying the bounded contexts. You'd likely have a catalog service for product info, a cart service for temporary storage, and a payment service for transactions. What matters here is that each of these has different requirements. Catalog is read-heavy, while payment needs extreme consistency. A failure mode here is putting inventory and catalog together just because they both deal with products. They are actually different. Inventory cares about warehouse counts, while catalog cares about marketing descriptions. By splitting them, you allow the warehouse team to update stock without affecting the customer-facing search. In your answer, emphasize that each service should own its own database and communicate via events, like order placed, to keep things decoupled. This shows you can apply DDD and data sovereignty to a real-world problem. It demonstrates that you're thinking about performance, team boundaries, and system reliability all at once. That's exactly what interviewers want to see in a senior-level candidate. We've just covered the heavy lifting of breaking down a monolith. The core mission here isn't just splitting up code. It's about finding those autonomous boundaries that actually let your teams move fast. We walked through three main strategies: using DDD's bounded contexts to keep your models clean, aligning with business capabilities like inventory or billing, and applying functional decomposition for specific features. The absolute non-negotiable we emphasized is data sovereignty. If you're still sharing a database, well, you're just building a distributed monolith. In a system design interview, you've got to demonstrate that you understand how Conway's law influences these boundaries. It's all about minimizing coupling so each service can evolve independently. Now you've got the mental model to justify exactly where those lines should be drawn and why. That wraps up our look at service decomposition. In an interview, don't just pick a pattern at random. You've got to justify your boundaries using three main perspectives: business capabilities, domain-driven design, and team alignment via Conway's law. Explain how you're balancing granularity to avoid the overhead of nanoservices while dodging the pitfalls of a distributed monolith. If this helped you sharpen your architectural thinking, subscribe to the channel and check out the full course details in the description. In the next episode, we'll discuss API composition, where we'll discuss situation, core understanding, definition. Best of luck with your system design prep.